What even are the best teams in Super Mega Baseball 2? This was the question I wanted answered. I needed to have answered before the migration to SMB3. How else will I know which teams improved and declined? So of course, I spent hours poring through the statistics pages, toying with different variables, and tallying numerical scores for every player in the 16 standard teams. Yes, I did that. Here are the results. First, I want to present a position players tier list. This is meant to rank the starting 8 of each team as far as offense and defense, weighed as I presented in my top 10 players list. If you haven't seen it, just know that offense is valued very high, and power is by far the most important. I used the best 8 scoring players, which is most often not the same as the default 8 players, so each team is represented by their best available score. Occupying the bottom tier for position players is the Moonstars. It's just a depressing lineup. Even their best players, Hackman, Gustafson, Windy Wheels, are not ranked close to the top 50 overall players. Their fielding is bad, their hitting is worse. Nothing here is good for them. Next to dead last is the other starting pitching specialist team, the Crocodon's best players, Hernandez, Candela, Terra Leonera, like the Moonstars, are not close to the top 50 overall. The one thing the Crocs lineup has over the Moons is their defense is okay and can actually adequately support their hurlers. They are, however, at least equally bad on offense. In fact, they score as the worst offensive team in the game. The Freebooters check in next with some of the worst defense in the league. Their offense is a bit better, with their top 3 especially offering respectable production. Jackman and Stiff slide into the top 50, and Brickhouse only misses because of his pitiful glove and arm. The rest of the order is disappointing though, so the Booters only climb past 2 teams and settle in there. Fourth to last, and here we have the Platypi. There is a lot of gymnastics involved in trying to squeeze as much offense into this lineup as possible, and I ended up having 4 players at a second position, which does hurt their defense a bit. You have to do it though, because runs are necessary for victory. And while Beefcake McStevens is a huge standout and a top 10 player, his running mates Sandrick and Willie Bacon are average at best. Sharing this tier with the Maybe Mammals is the Beewolves. Dexterez is excellent and barely missed my top 10 list, coming in 11th. Biggs is solidly within the top 50, but after those two, they experience quite a drop-off in talent. Their defense pushes them well ahead of the freebies, with their offenses ranking similarly. Next in line is the other, quote, balanced team, the Sawteeth. Their top guys, Trips, Renero, and Johnny Bags, all rank top 50 in production, but they taper off drastically after. Their defense is spotty, but they have the best offense we've seen to this point. The Grapplers round out this tier for position players, while they have Bambino as a huge kingpin in the lineup, and Finder and DeMarco are no slouches as well, placing top 50 for hitters. The back of their order is awful and really brings them down. They actually rank near the Bs in both offense and defense, just outpacing them in both. Jumping into what I would call the mid-tier, we have the Herbisaurs. This team's defense is obviously top tier, but their offense is not to be slept on, ranking about even with the Beewolves and Graps. They manage 4 guys within the top 50 in position production: Hamster, Stanberg, Manley, and Rojas. Sharing mid-tier is the Moose. Their overall is very close to their mid-tier companion, but their method of getting there is different with the best offense we've seen to this point. They have 3 players inside the top 50 and 1 in the top 10, Dingers, Jackson, and Fast. Jumping up a tier, we first see the Blowfish, best being Stanley, Steed, and the offensive powerhouse Backman. They're carried by a strong offense, with their defense being 3rd worst. The Buzzards are next, with their high defensive score and their offense that outclasses the Moose. Like the Herbies, they have 4 top 50 representatives, their best of which are Often, Mustachio, and Bunterson. Next up, we have our first unhinged speed demons, the Wild Pigs. The Wild Pigs care not for defense and rank as the worst in the league in fielding and arms, but their offense is nuts. They have 4 guys in the top 50, and their back of the order holds up well. Evans, Stiffner, and Michaels represent their top 3 guys. The Wideloads fill out the tier with another explosive offense. Their defense is okay overall, but is full of studs and duds, so there's holes to be exploited. 5 of their players find their way into the top 50. Liner, Gaspar, and Hobbs are their best. Moving up to high tier, the Overdogs make an appearance. Their defense ranks lower than the Wideloads overall, but the dispersal of talent is more even, so maybe they will make fewer errors as well as fewer highlights. Among the most balanced teams, but not without their studs, they too have 4 in the top 50, but also 2 in the top 10. Horn, Brown, and Emmon are their best. The Sirloins come next with their potent power and speed. They're slightly back of the Pigs in offensive rating, but their defense pulls them ahead. 4 players of theirs are in the top 50: Longballow, Bash, Rush, and Cook. The best starting 8 in the league belongs to the Nemesis. Their offense actually only ranks 4th, but their defense ranks 2nd ahead of the Buzzards. They have an absurd 6 players in the top 50, 2 top 10, Slam Sports and Moonshada are their best. Next up, I set out to rank pitching staves. I thought measuring junk and accuracy summed as even against velocity seemed about right, but I wanted to give an edge to accuracy because I feel it is more necessary. So I multiplied velocity by 5, junk 2, and accuracy 3. I gave a fielding bonus of 10% of their rating, and since changeups are busted, didn't you know? I gave a plus 10 bonus for that pitch. I didn't feel that Arsenal was a huge factor other than that, with one specific exception that I will touch on later. I also didn't just for starters versus relievers, all seem about even in importance, and I did include all 8 pitchers per team, as all will be needed if playing a season. This is different if you're playing an exhibition or pennant race, and I will touch on that later on. Bottom tier in pitching is the inverse in position players. Hooray for balance. The Nemesis hope their defense can pick them up when they put their 5th worst rotation and 2nd worst bullpen on the bump. They are the only team without a top 50 rep for pitchers, with their top guy Caruso barely missing the cut by a few slots. The Buzzards come in 1 tier above, sporting the 2nd worst rotation in the game. Their pen is their saving grace here, but they rank right down the middle in the 8th slot. Their only top 50 guy, Max Texas, is their bullpen anchor. The Platypi come in next thanks to their abysmal bullpen ranked dead last by a landslide. Their 6th ranked rotation can't save them here as their bullpen is just so bad. Shout out to the worst pitcher in the game, not close, Chance Lauderby. Their rotation does house 2 top 50 throwers in Ace Von Assessant and Donk O, with Tubrek just missing the cut. Next up we have the Overdogs. Not known for their pitching, the Dogs still manage 2 top 50 guys with starter Chasey Kim and reliever David Diggler. Their rotation ranks 4th to last, and their pen comes in at a respectable 7th overall. The Sawteeth neighbor the Hounds with their similarly ranked 3rd worst rotation and 6th best pen. Only their closer, Max Primo, gets into the top 50, but he's up there in the 12th spot. Their rotation is crippled by a lack of velocity. The Herbisaurs rank next with a top mark so far of 3 top 50 pitchers, Qualita, Fuss, and Slackoff, each of them coming from their 7th ranked rotation. Their pen is less impressive, ranking 3rd worst. Next to the Green Machine is their omnivorous fellow heavyset, the Wide Loads. Their ace, Chug Bourbony, ranks inside the top 10, but they have no one else in their top 50. Still, their rotation and pen both manage to rank 9th overall, just below average. Less balanced are the Blowfish Hurlers. While their rotation ranks 8th and is home to 3 top 50 tossers, Dregler, Bradwick, and Draculo, their pen is terrible and comes in tied for 4th to last ranking, despite the presence of Joanna Heater, who also ranks as a top 50 arm. Jumping into the top half for pitching, we first have the Grapplers. Their pen easily ranks 2nd and holds 3 top 50 performers, Lapata, Gunn, and Overrow, the last 2 of which are inside the top 10. But the rotation holds them back, ranking dead last. The Beewolves rotation is much more impressive with 2 top 50 people and 1 top 10. Hurley Bender is the ace, backed up by Yolanda Cooper. These 2 and their running mates achieve the 4th ranking for starters, but their pen is worse, being the team tied for 4th to last with the Spiky Pufferfish. Just ahead of them, both overall and in rotation ranks, are the Meaty Mashers themselves. Their 3rd best rotation sees each of their 4 starters within the top 50, Kay, Snugs, Vanderwick, and Arches, and they are joined by Shay D from the bullpen, where she doesn't have a whole lot of help, but manages to pull them up to a 9th ranking. Next up, the Crocodons make an early appearance. Their rotation is solid as advertised, but not intensely so. After their number 1 overall, Jovita Pulo, they tapered down with the next 3 guys, Fuller, Brick, and Caps, ranking in the late teens, 20s, and 30s respectively. While this is good for 2nd as far as starters, the pen brings them down, only pulling a rank of 5th to last. Pressure's on for the rotation. The Wild Pigs are next, sporting 4 top 50 mound mantelpieces, Wes Yogurt as the only starter, and the 3 relievers being Jones, Kerr, and Lantana. This earns them the 3rd best bullpen, with their last guy Drake barely missing the top 50 and tying for 51st. Their rotation is middle of the pack at 8th. Coming in 3rd overall is the top bullpen in the game, the Freebooters. They have 6 top 50 arms and 4 pen pieces, and 2 from the rotation. Kay Frequent is an interesting case. Her numerical stats are insane, but somehow she doesn't throw a 4-seam fastball, instead relying on a 2-seamer and a screwball. I had to dock her points for this, because the 2-seamer just doesn't have the same speed on it. lacking about 5 miles per hour. I decided to take off 10 points per mph, so she got hit with a minus 50 penalty. She still ranks second in overall despite this. It's tricky to know if this is right. Their pen is still well ahead of the second place Graps with a 100-point lead. Whistle and McMahon are also studs in the pen, and Noel is a very good arm in a rotation that ranks 11th. The second best pitching belongs to the Moose. Their pen comes in 4th, only just edged out by the Pigs, but the rotation is also solid and comes in 5th. They match the Booters with 6 in the top 50, 3 in the rotation, 3 in the pen. Best is a top 10 arm, Cannon is a top 20. Just as with the Nemesis, the best 8 position guys being matched with the worst 8 pitchers, the inverse is also reality, with the Moonstars sporting the top tossers in the game. They too have 6 inside the top 50, 3 starters, 3 relievers, but unique to them, all 3 starters are inside the top 10. They actually only just edge out the Crocs for the top rotation despite this because their 4th guy, Wonderfloss, is average at best. In addition, McWales' velocity in the 5th best pen is a maxed out 99. These are some scary guys to match up against. Good thing their offense stinks. Alright, so what happens when we combine the lineup and pitching scores? To combine the scores, I took the full lineup score summed with half of the pitching score because offense is key, and it just seemed right because science. Here's what I got. The Platypi were 4th to last in lineup and 3rd to last in pitching with the absolute worst bullpen. This does not add up to anything impressive. They rank dead last overall. While the Crocs do have the 2nd best rotation, their arms only rank 5th overall and their lineup is 2nd worst, so their horses can't eat up enough outs to save them from a 15th place finish. The Moonstars are next. While they do boast the #1 pitching staff in the game, their last place lineup brings them down to 14th. The Sawteeth have bad pitching, 5th worst, and their lineup of studs and duds is only barely better at 6th worst. Overall, this puts them at 13th. Jumping up a bit, we have another team of misfits, the Beewolves. Their solid rotation lands them the 7th pitching staff, but their lackluster 5th worst lineup drags them into the 12th overall spot. The Freebooters come next with their 3rd best pitching and 3rd worst lineup. They're the bullpen equivalent of the Moonstars. Not exactly what you want to be. They're in 11th place. Our first top 10 squad is going to be the Buzzards. Their lineup holds water as the 6th ranking, but their pitching staff is 2nd worst. So, they're lucky to place 10th. The Herbisaurs follow in 9th, which is where their position players rank, while their pitching ranks a couple spots further down in 11th. Good for a middle-of-the-pack finish. The Grapplers are in 8th. Their lineup is 10th, and their pitching, despite their bullpen of studs, is only 8th because of a league's worst rotation. This is a team that will see a rise in pennant rankings next because starters are not critical in that 5-inning format. In the next tier up, we see the Blowfish landing in 7th, which is where their offense ranks, while their pitching ranks 9th, and they'll sit alone in that tier. The Overdogs kick off high tier with their powerhouse 3rd best offense brought down by a 4th worst pitching staff. Stay tuned for their pennant rank. The Wide Loads edge them out here despite their offense ranking a spot lower in 4th because of a bit better overall pitching in 10th. The Nemesis' top lineup and bottom pitching earns them the 4th overall ranking, and this closes out high tier. The Moose make it in top tier for season mode. They have a pitching staff of high performers that ranks 2nd overall and actually match it with some offense coming in 8th in this category. The Wild Pigs come in 2nd with their powerhouse Pigpen putting them in 4th and their powerhouse offense bringing a lineup score of 5th. The top ranking team for season mode is the Sirloins. Their lineup of mashers is 2nd only to the Nemesis, and their rotation carried pitching is good enough for 6th overall. As for a pennant tier list, we would need to tweak this list a bit, mainly because overall consistency from pitchers is of less value since only so many arms can perform in a short 5 innings, and there's no need to rest pitchers so you can always use your best every game. Bullpen arms specifically receive a buff because you can choose when they enter the game, and if you have a couple good ones, you can pinch hit for them each time their spot comes through the lineup. So, working from the bottom up, the Moonstars have a good pen, but they already rely on their rotation to get them out of bottom tier, so that amounts to basically no change. The Freebooters are the best pen, so they'll get a boost, but their lineup is so bad, I can't justify moving them out of mid tier. The Grapplers will get a solid boost because one of their main flaws is a poor rotation, and in pennant race, you can pull the starter in the first inning without remorse. Still not a great offense, however. The Overdogs have some solid pen performers, so they'll move up a bit. The Nemesis and Wide Loads are all about offense, so they won't move too drastically, and if you pull Chug Bourbony as a starter for the Lodes, you'll have a tremendous advantage in pitching as well. The Moose have to be brought down a tad because they rely on consistent production and it can't shine as much in the 5-inning format. They belong somewhere in high tier because their offense is better than the Graps, and they still have their one extreme pitching stud in Best. Maybe the Pigs jump the Sirloins for that number 1 spot since they have the pen while the Meatmen have the starters, but another heavier consideration on line is catcher arm, and the Pigs don't have that. So I'll call it a wash and leave it as is. So there's the tier list video. Now we can go into 3 with nothing left undone and full awareness of any game balancing that will take place. I can't wait to see which teams will fall and which will rise up to the elite class. If you made it to the end of the video, share your thoughts on which teams you think are the best and worst. And thanks for watching.